So hey everyone, welcome back to the Advanced Backend Engineering Complete Course 2026. In the previous video, we talked about the Node.js timers module, we saw set timeout, set interval, and set immediate functions. And we also started getting into how Node.js handles all of these asynchronous operations. Now today we are going to take that one step further. We are going to talk about callbacks. Now, if you have worked with JavaScript before, you may have already seen callbacks without even realizing it. For example, you might have written something like this. Okay. So the function we are passing inside this setTimeout method is actually a callback. But callbacks are not only about timers. They are one of the fundamental concepts behind any kind of asynchronous programming in Node.js. And before we move to promises and async awaiting the next video, I want to make sure callbacks are completely clear. So let's start with a very simple example. So over here, I will create a function. Let's say greet, okay? And I will create another function. Let's say after greet, okay? Now, within this greet, I will pass something. Let's say it is the name, and I will receive it as a string. Then the callback, okay? Callback function, and I will pass a void. Why void? Because void, it simply returns nothing. Okay. Now I will console.log this. Let's say hello append, and I will pass this name. Then after this, I will implement this callback, or I will simply call this callback function. Okay. Then within this after greet function, I will first console.log something. Let's say welcome to the backend complete course 2026. Okay. Now I will call this greet function. Now I will pass the name, the value of let's say it is Nabarun, and then I will call this after greet function. Now I will run this program npm run dev. Okay. So here this after greet function is a normal function, but when we pass it to this greet function, okay, like this, we are using it as a callback. So the inside this greet function, we call this callback function. So first we get this hello Nabarun, then we get this welcome back to the complete backend course 2026. Over here you can see this. Okay. So the basic idea of a callback is actually very simple. We are taking a function and passing it to another function so that the other function can execute it when it needs to. Let's make this a little more practical. I will create a function. Let's say it is calculate. Okay. Okay. Now I will pass, let's say a, b, and a callback function. So I have to mention this as a string, or let's say the number, and this callback, let's say I will pass a parameter. this is a result and it is a number, and I will use the void. Okay, now I will say over here const result equals a plus b. Okay, then I will call this function callback and I will pass this result. Now I will create another function, or let's say I will create something like this, calculate. Okay, then I will pass 10, 20 result, oops, result. Okay, then I will log this result. I will say console.log and I will say result is uh, uh, result result. Okay, so here we are actually calculating the result first, and once we are done, we are calling the callback and passing it passing the result to it. Okay, so we get this result is 30. Now this example is synchronous because everything happens immediately, but callbacks become much more interesting when we use them with asynchronous operations. Let's create a small example using the setTimeout method. So first thing first, I will create a function, let's say fetch user, or yeah, fetch user. Okay, now I will pass a callback function. Okay, I will pass a name as a string and I will use the setTimeout method. setTimeout. Okay, now I will use a delay of, let's say, 3 seconds. Okay, and within this I will log let's say fetching user. Okay, okay, then I will pass this callback. Let's say it is Nabarun. Okay, now I will call this fetch user and I will pass the name, not name like this. Okay, let me first console.log this, then I will say user let's say received. Okay, I will use the append, then I will pass this name. Okay, so here we are pretending that we are fetching a user from somewhere. Okay, of course we are not actually connecting it to a database yet, but we are just using this setTimeout method to simulate an asynchronous operation. So the fetch user, this function, okay, so this function, it starts the operation and after approximately 3 seconds the callback is executed. So we get this fetching user, then user received the username. Okay, and this pattern is extremely important in backend development. Okay, imagine instead of a setTimeout method, we are reading a file, querying a database or something like communicating with another service. So we start the operation and once it is completed, we execute the callback. So this is one of the ways asynchronous programming worked in Node.js before promises become widely used. Let's see an actual Node.js example now. I'm going to use the built-in FS module. So let me first comment out all of these. Then I will import the FS from the FS module. Import FS from FS module. Okay. Let's say I have a file called message.txt, and inside that file I have something like let's say hello from Node.js. Okay. Now I can read that file asynchronously. For that I will create that file first. I will say message.txt. Okay. Over here I will write something like this. Hello from the uh, Node.js text file. Okay. Then over here I will say fs dot read file. I will first pass the file name, that is message.txt. Then I will pass something like this utf8. Okay. Then I will pass a callback function. So I have to pass two parameters over here. I will say error and the data. Now inside this callback function, I will create a condition. I will implement it. Let's say if error, then I will simply console.log this error message. Error and return. Otherwise, I will simply return the file, or let's say log this. Log. Okay, and I will say file content, and I will pass this data. Okay. Now look at the last parameter, this function, callback function. This is the callback function, and this is the two parameters. This is error and the data. Okay. So Node.js will execute this function once the file reading operation is completed, and you will notice something interesting, that is again this error and the data. Okay, so this is commonly known as the error fast callback patterns. So the idea is very simple. If something goes wrong, the first parameter contains the error, or if everything works correctly, the second parameter contains this result. Okay, so that is why we usually write this: if error, then console.log this error and then return, otherwise this. Okay, and continue with the data over here. I will write continue with the data, otherwise. And over here, let's say if something goes wrong, then show the error message or error data. So this pattern is very common in Node.js APIs. Now let's understand why callbacks were so important in the first place. Imagine we are building a backend server. Okay, so a user sends a request to our API. The API needs to read a file or communicate with the database. So that operation may take some time. Okay, but we don't want the entire Node.js application to just sit there doing nothing while waiting for that operation to finish. Instead, Node.js can start the operation and continue doing other work. Once the operation is complete, then the callback can be executed. So we can see a very simple version of using a timer. Okay, let's create another example. So first thing first, I will log something So I will say over here request started. Okay, something like this. Then I will use the method setTimeout. I will use the delay of 3 seconds. Inside this callback, I will also log, let's say, database operation, maybe completed. Okay, completed, done. Okay, okay. After that, I will create, I will say, request continues. Okay, okay. So the output is request started, request continues, then database operation completed. Notice that the second message does not wait for 2 seconds. So Node.js schedules the callback and continues executing the rest of the code. Later, when the callback is ready to run, it gets executed. Okay, so this is one of the important ideas behind Node.js non-blocking programming model. Now let's create a more realistic backend style example. Suppose we have, let me first comment out this. Let's say we have a function. Okay, function, let's say it is get user. Now over here I will pass something like user ID as a number, then the callback function. Okay, okay. Or let's say I will simply returns nothing. I will use this void. Now within this parenthesis I will pass error first, error message. Okay, then the user. So the error is something like this, error or let's say null. Okay, and this user contains something like ID. Okay, it is a number, then name, it will be a string, or let's say null. Okay, I will say over here null. Let me format this. Okay, now I will implement this setTimeout method. First thing first, I will pass a callback with the delay of let's say 2 seconds. Okay, so first thing first, I will use this if loop. Then I will say if user ID uh, less than equals to 0. Okay, then I will say callback, and I will pass something like a new error maybe, or you can throw an error also. You can use this. I will use this new error, invalid uh, user ID, and then I will pass this null. Okay, not like this. I have to pass within this callback function. Then I will simply return this. Okay, then I will again use this callback function. Now this time I will first pass this null, then I will pass this id, and the id will be something like this user id, then oops, not here, this name. Okay, let's say the name is Nabarun. Okay, let me format this. Okay, now let's call this function, this get user. Okay, then I will pass let's say 101, the user ID, then this callback. Over here I will say error the user. Okay, then I will say if error, then I will simply console.log this uh, the error message. Okay, something like this, error dot message. Okay, then I will simply return this. Then I will console.log this user, and I will pass this user. Okay, so after approximately 2 seconds, we will receive something like this. So if we change the id to something like this 10, or let's say 11110. Okay, you can see over here after approximately 2 seconds it will change. Okay, so now if we change the id to something invalid, let's say over here I will say -1. Okay, so you can see over here that the error is invalid user ID. So this is a nice example of how callbacks can handle both successful results and errors. But now let's imagine our application becomes more complicated. Suppose we first need to get the user. After getting the user, we need to get the user's order. Then after getting the orders, we need to process an order, and after processing the order, we need to send an email. So with callbacks we could end up writing something like this. Let me first comment out all of these. So over here I will say get user, oops, then I will say over here the get orders. Okay, okay, let me first pass this parameter within this get user. I will say over here user. Okay, then within this get orders function I will say user, then another callback function, let's say orders. Okay, then I will say send email. Again I have to pass this order, let's say orders. Okay, then I will create another callback function. Let's say it will be order. Okay, or let's say this is not send email. This will be, let's say, process the order. Process the order. Let me process order. Okay, now this time I will pass this I will create another function, callback function, that is a send email. Okay, now this time I will pass this order. Then again I will create another callback function. Then I will simply uh, say over here console.log. Okay, and I will say success. Okay, now at this point uh, the code starts moving further and further to the right, and if we add error handling to every operation, it becomes even harder to read. Now imagine having let's say 10 or 15 asynchronous operations. Okay, so that is where we get what is commonly called callback hell. So the code can start looking like a pyramid. Okay, again, callbacks themselves are not bad. That is important. Callbacks are a perfectly valid programming concept. Now the problem is when we have many asynchronous operations that depend on each other, and we start nesting callbacks inside callbacks, so it becomes harder to read or harder to maintain, and error handling becomes more complicated. And this is exactly where promises come into this picture. Promises were introduced to make asynchronous code easier to manage, and after that JavaScript gave us async and await method, which made asynchronous code even easier to read. But before we move there, I want to show you one more thing. A callback does not have to be asynchronous. For example, let me first uh, comment out all of this. Then I will create a function. Let's say process user. Okay. Okay. I will pass a name as a string, and then a callback function. Okay, void. Also, I will pass name within this callback function. I will simply console.log something, let's say processing user. Okay, then I will implement this. I will pass this name within this callback function. Then I will call this process user. I will pass the name, let's say it is Nabarum. I will say console.log. Let's say user append this name. Then I will say processed. Okay. So this is still a callback, but it executes synchronously. So don't think that callback automatically means asynchronous. Okay. A callback is simply a function being passed to another function. Whether that callback executes immediately or later depends on how the outer function uses it. Let's make another a final example using a timer. I will say function. Let's say perform, or okay, perform any kind of task. Okay. I will pass a callback function, or let's say void. Okay, then I will pass a message as a string. I will first log something like this. task started. Okay, then I will implement set timeout with the delay of, let's say, 2 seconds. Now first I will console dot log task completed. Okay, again I will console something, not console.log, it will be the callback console.log. Oops, so not over here. Within these curly braces, I will simply log task complete or completed. Then I will call this callback function and I will pass a message. Let's say task was successful. Okay, now I will call this function perform task. Okay, this message, then I will log console.log this message. Okay, task started, task completed, task was successful. So we are simulating an asynchronous backend operation. The task starts over here. Okay, after 2 seconds the task completed, then task was successful. Okay, so this is a very simple pattern. It is actually the foundation for understanding a lot of asynchronous code. So start an operation, wait for it to finish, then execute the callback. Now there is one important thing I want to all of you remember from today's video. Even though we are going to use promises and async await in the next video, callbacks are still very important. You will still see callbacks in Node.js APIs, like libraries, even event driven programming and older code bases. Okay, so more importantly, if you understand callbacks properly, you will understand why promises were needed, and that is why we are learning these topics in this video. First the callbacks, then the promises, and then the async await. Okay, and later we will connect all of this with the Node.js event loop and understand what is actually happening behind the scenes. So that's it for day 9. Today we understood what callbacks are, how functions can be passed as callbacks, how callbacks can be synchronous or asynchronous, how like Node.js uses the error first callback pattern, and why deeply nested callbacks can become difficult to manage. And we will take the next step and learn about promises and async await in the next video. We will see how a promise represents the eventual result of an asynchronous operation, how dot then method and dot catch method work, and then we will see how async await make our backend code much cleaner and easier to understand. So make sure you practice today's examples yourself. Don't just watch the code. Change the values, introduce errors, add another callback, and see what happens over there. That is how you will actually understand Node.js. Thank you so much for watching my video, and I will see all of you in the next video, that is promises and async await. Till bye bye and happy code.